Yeah.
Frost. Frost.
There was some scattered rain. I don't know if that delayed anybody getting here or not. It was raining over where I came from pretty hard.
Oh, I had sent in some corrections to these, but she incorporated them.
Good afternoon and welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Zoning Adjustment. We'll start with a roll call vote.
Drew Goodner,
Here.
Frost Rollins. Here. Emmy Sorrells. Kim White. Here. Marty Hepburn.
Here.
Letitia Smith. Mary Boyd.
All right. We will look at the minutes from last month. If anyone wants to make a motion on those, the June 1st minutes.
I was mentioning that I sent in some corrections to Jessica, and those were incorporated. Did anybody else have any?
I looked at them online, so I don't know if those were the ones that were updated, but I just saw that it was listing David Hill.
Yeah, that's been changed. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from June 1st, 2022.
Second?
Drew Goodner,
Yes.
Frost Rollins.
Yes.
Kim White.
Yes.
Marty Hepburn.
Yes.
All right. I've got an opening remark to make. Any persons aggrieved by any decision of the board may within 15 days after such a decision appeal to the circuit court having jurisdiction according to section 908.02 of the zoning ordinance of the city of Auburn, Alabama. And normally we have, so this board consists of 7 members, 5 regular members, 2 supernumeraries. There have to be 4 votes in the affirmative to pass. So tonight there are 4 of us, so you have to have a unanimous decision for a variance request to pass. And I think Steve and staff have communicated that to everyone. So if there is someone who wants to postpone until a meeting where there are 5 voting members, at that point you still have to have vote, but 4 vote in favor. It's not just a simple majority for this board. For old business, we will start with BZ 2022009.
All right, good afternoon. The request before you is for a variance to the side yard setback. The property is located at 2372 East University Drive in the CDD zoning district near the intersection of North Dean Road and EUD. Here's an aerial image showing the site pre-construction with a shared access driveway between the River Trust Bank and the subject property. The site plan for the project was reviewed by staff and originally represented a conforming setback. After several revisions, the building footprint was moved to the east slightly, and that resulted in the setback being non-conforming. Additionally, architectural plans had not been reviewed at the time, and that added 6 feet to the required setback. Some permits to start initial site construction while the final building permit was being reviewed were issued, so there was some vertical construction. Staff reviewed the project for the final building permit, and that's when it was noticed that the setback was too close, with the patio area being approximately 12 feet from the property line and the overall building height being 21 feet to the property line. So here's the current situation out at the site. The upper portion of the building is essentially framed in already. There's a large retaining wall that was required to accommodate the building footprint. Here is a view from the neighboring property looking towards the building. And here's that aerial again, showing some of the topo challenges that the site faced, and why they had to build the retaining wall, which essentially dropped the building 13 feet below grade, to have the grade flush with the shared driveway. So the grade difference between the two does meet the intent of the angle of light setback in that the building dropped down 13 feet, so that angle of light is being maintained in a sense that it's not creating a nuisance, not creating a fire hazard issue. So if the variance were granted, there's no issue to the general welfare or to fire safety. But there are no hardships associated with the request. They originally had a site plan that was conforming. There are things they could do to make the site conforming, although it may be have some economic challenges to it. But economic difficulties are not a grounds for granting a variance. We did receive a letter from the adjacent property owner that has no objections to the granting of the variance. Based on the criteria in A through G and referenced in your staff report, because not all of the criteria were met, staff recommends denial. The applicant's representative is here, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
If the applicant would like to come forward and speak, if you'll sign in right there to the left on your clipboard, on that clipboard.
Trying to figure this out here.
If you press the top one, it'll zoom. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, pressing on. All right. Good afternoon, David Slocum. I'm the civil engineer of record for this project. And I wanted to begin by just giving you a brief overview of what this project is. This is a 18,600 square foot Class A office space building. I don't know if any of you have looked for office space in Auburn recently, but it's difficult to find Class A office space. I've looked myself. We're really looking forward to this project coming online. It will be, it'll have 16,000 square feet of leasable space, and 85% of that space is already leased to businesses such as commercial real estate, CPAs, financial advisors, things like that. So it'll be a professional office building. So as Logan showed you, this is the site. You can see North Dean here. This is Riverbank and Trust. And then this is where, when Riverbank was being constructed, this was the temporary bank location. And I don't know if any of you remember, but there was a significant slope between this tree line and this asphalt here of about 13 feet. So if you'll also notice this very thick shadow here, that is a retaining wall between the riverbank site and the climate controlled storage units. And I haven't been back there lately, but that's probably about 15 feet of fall between those two sites. So there's significant grade changes and topography challenges with this site. This is the open field that you've probably ridden by and seen the big longhorn cattle out there. That's the property owner that wrote the letter saying that he has no objection. So As we've mentioned, this variance is all about the angle of light setback. I'm sure you all are very familiar with how that works. The eave height from the front of the building is 26 feet. If you look at the eave height from the property line in question, it's only 13 feet. So had the building been constructed the way it's shown here, there would be no variance needed. However, we chose to excavate this area, this small area here, and build a retaining wall, which is shown here. So the reason for that is to allow, there's several reasons for that, to allow air conditioner units to be placed in that space so they're not visible from East University in the parking lot. There, I'll show you the floor plan in a moment. There are 2 doors that provide emergency egress out of the building on that end. There are windows on that building that also serve not only as daylight for the tenants, but for emergency fire egress also. And not to mention the fact that the building of the retaining wall allows full use of the property rather than having a completely different layout. So this is the floor plan. You can see the air conditioner units here. This is the retaining wall. This is the open space. You can see the exit there and windows along this side of the building. So, as Logan mentioned, we believe the intent of the zoning ordinance is met. The zoning ordinance says the angle of light setback is to ensure adequate air, sunlight, and privacy to adjoining properties. So if the variance is granted, the intent of the ordinance is still met. If you look at the difference between this scenario and this scenario, the eave height doesn't change. This doesn't require a variance. This does require a variance. So the entire reason for the variance is this one excavated area. I'm hoping that makes sense, because the planning department now has to measure the eave height from this point rather than this point. So this is, I think, the same photo that Logan had showing the retaining wall. You can see the adjacent grade is pretty much level with that second floor. So if you view the building, did we lose that last photo? Yeah, from the adjacent property, it appears to be a one-story building because of that drastic grade change. So that's why we believe the intent of the zoning ordinance is still met. And it all just boils down to a technicality of where you measure the angle of light. If you draw the one-to-one line from that point, it clears the eave height. So we believe the variance is necessary to allow full use of the property, to allow adequate emergency egress, to allow space for utilities to be concealed. And the entire variance is caused by this unique property topography scenario. And as Logan mentioned, granting of the variance doesn't negatively affect the adjacent property owner or the general public. So we hope you'll consider making a positive vote. And I appreciate your attention. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you. So is that a staircase is that emergency egress there, or is that just a patio you're hanging out on?
Yes, it is emergency
Okay,
egress.
that's what I thought that was an
Yes.
exit for I just didn't see any stairs. I
For
assume
the
those are
second-
coming later.
Second floor
Okay.
and first floor.
Okay.
So the door on the first floor is an emergency egress, or the patio is an emergency egress as well?
Can you put that slide up that shows that where the cutaway was, where the wall is?
Logan's in control now. Yeah, is this the one?
The one from the
Or
side.
the actual picture, I think, is what we want to
Well,
see.
either one, yeah. No, go back
The
one.
one that's in
Just
section.
scroll backwards.
That
right there.
one.
Or the,
Or did you want to see a different one?
no, that's good enough.
So that deck, that second floor deck, that's access out of the building as well?
Yes, but that wouldn't be considered emergency access because
There's no
you're
way
at a
down?
dead end there. Yes, there's a staircase immediately to the left of that would bring you down to that end of the building where you could exit and go either direction.
Okay.
So it's internal.
Yes,
And there's doors and windows below the deck for exit?
exactly, yes.
So is that emergency exit required to meet the code for emergency exits?
Yes, it's my understanding. I'm not an architect, but yes, it's my understanding that that is required.
So was it approved before you made this, wasn't it approved before you made this change though?
The building plans were not reviewed until we got to this point. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm asking.
Yeah, and when they were reviewed, that's when this issue came apparent.
And you mean reviewed by the city?
Exactly, yes.
And if you dug down, just understand the angle of light, if you dug down another floor and didn't build a retaining wall, then you'd have to be 10 feet further away? Steve?
The height measurement's taken at the base of the building, so the grade basically. So you measure the height from the grade at the building to the eave, and then that dictates the setback.
So the fact that they put that retaining wall in there and lowered it made this become a variance issue?
Yeah, if that was a sort of a basement on that end of the building and the grade was like the other drawing that he showed, up below that deck that extends out, then it would be measured from that point and it would comply.
Because this seems like a better use for the people in the building. I mean, you got more daylight coming in. This is about daylight. You got emergency access. So the people that are in that space, it seems like they would benefit. If like I was in that office and that was dirt up against that wall, that's not gonna be as interesting to me.
Is this a property line issue or a angle of light issue or both? Like what is the
It's
most important intent here?
It's just a setback variance.
It's just a straight setback,
Yes, ma'am.
because we don't usually look at angle of light.
Yeah, most of the time setbacks are explicitly defined, 20
Yeah.
feet, 15 feet, that kind of thing. And for non-residential uses in CDD, it's based on that angle of light.
And you see it rarely in some of the residential,
Multifamily.
we haven't seen many of them at all.
I would just say it's sort of the premise of the setback and the angle of light is built into it. It talks about the purpose. You have this angle of light, and in this district, it's 1-to-1, so it's 1 foot of setback for each foot of height. But to arrive at it, there's not some study where you actually look at, is light getting through, and talks about space, air, light, those types of things. But it's more of just a setback calculation. So it talks about angle of light, but then it says to determine the setback, you take the height, and then if it's 1-to-1, it's that. If it's 0.75 feet to 1, then it's a different setback requirement. So that's how it works out.
But didn't it say in the details it talked about that, or that angle of light was kind of determined back in like the 1920s in New York when they're building tall buildings to make sure, you know, light could get through and people weren't getting, you know, blocked from, you know, air and light and that kind of thing?
There's certainly some history in zoning in bigger cities, taller, you know, cities where you have high rises and things like that, where there's a concern about light. It's not usually in rural cities and suburban areas where it becomes as important, but it is sort of the foundation for this setback in the district, like Logan said, where it's based on this concept of angle of light.
Sorry, I was gonna make a point of clarity. You asked about the emergency exit on the east side. While there would be emergency exits, as I assume the architect would be planned for, and from a codes perspective, there are other means to meet emergency exit requirements without those exits.
Thank you, that's what I was asking.
Any more questions for the applicant?
I have one other question. Logan mentioned something about the desire to be at grade with the existing driveway. Do you want to comment on that?
I think what he's referring to is the entire site could have been filled possibly to 13 feet, which would cause a major differential between riverbank, the driveway, the access, and so forth. So that's why the building was lowered to be level with riverbank and the access point, which caused the need for the retaining wall and the cut on that side of the site. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's just they would not, I don't believe they'd be able to get another driveway. They would have to use the driveway that's there. And since that's at the level that River Trust Bank is, they wouldn't have a way to raise the site and still use that driveway.
Anything else? Thank you, David.
Yes.
All right, we'll open the public hearing if anyone would like to speak in favor of or against this variance request.
I got a question if I could.
Yeah, if you come up and sign in and then ask.
Excuse me, I just came from working. Sign in.
Yes, sir, and then tell us your name.
Mike Thompson. And the reason I'm asking is I've got a similar situation, not exactly the same, but I've had one before. And just as a matter of the code and asking for this variance, is the setback, I'm asking the experts, is the setback primarily to protect the area and especially the neighbors? I mean, I know there's also some other issues involved, but what is the primary reason for the setback from a property line?
Mr. Chairman, and I'll let Logan add in if he wants to, but, setbacks are for a number of purposes in zoning. You have different types of zoning. So in this zoning in Auburn, we've already talked about, it talks about the angle of light, and it talks about in that section 5, preservation of air and light for adjacent and adjoining properties so that you're not having adverse impacts on the adjacent properties. Of course, in a general sense, setbacks are also used just to separate buildings, provide separation between uses, right? Logan, you work with us every day. You want to add some more to that, or?
Covered it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm speaking in favor of the variance then, because it seems to me the primary reason for this particular section of the code is primarily for light, movement of air, and only because it's dropped down 10 or 12 feet, whatever it is, you have a kind of an arbitrary measurement now that really doesn't affect the original intent of the sign of light and the airflow and those kind of things. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak? All right, we'll close the public hearing and open up to the board for discussion and or a motion.
to me, like I said, I think they didn't have to dig that down. It makes it, creates a variance issue, but actually it makes to me, it makes the building a better place to occupy. And the neighbor is fine with it. So I think if they had left the dirt there, it's less attractive of a space
Yeah.
versus taking the dirt out.
I agree that it meets the intent as far as angle of light, but unfortunately, that's just one of several criteria we have to consider.
I don't see how there was a hardship in the first place that necessitated the digging down of the, and installation of the retaining wall. I mean, the site is what it is. I don't see why you needed to go there. Like, you could have still met the requirement the way it was. And while I agree that it totally makes a nicer space, I mean, I have no problem with that. And even, as far as the intent is concerned. I mean, I guess just from a procedural standpoint, it seems like, it was fine, and now it's not.
But if you vote against this, do you have to fill it in with dirt and bring it up to, is that what has to happen, Steve?
Yeah, they'd move that wall and fill it in with dirt. I mean, the building stays the same, the angle of light stays the same. I mean, to me, it's an oddity in the code with how it's written, which we run across these from time to time. It doesn't change the angle of light one bit, which is what the code is written for.
Could they also see if the neighbor is willing to deed them a little land and then the setback is further?
I'm sure they've probably, we're not going to get into finances, but I imagine that Mr. Patton's not just going to deed over a 5-foot strip of land for.
Well, yes.
I know, that's what I said, we're not going to get into
Just saying-
finances.
just saying there are
Yeah,
options.
I still think it's a silly thing for the code. I'll make a motion to approve BZ 2022009.
To approve the variance?
Yeah.
I agree, second.
Drew Goodner,
Yes.
Frost Rollins, Kim White,
No.
Marty Heffron.
Yes.
All right, the variance did not pass. Moving on to BZ 2022010.
They wish to postpone until.
That's the one that postponed.
August
Okay,
the
I'm
3rd.
sorry.
Yep.
I remember we got an email about that one. BZ 22011. Oh, and do we need to make a motion to, we do, okay. All right, I'll make a motion to postpone BZ 2022010 to our August meeting.
Second.
Drew Goodner,
Yes.
Frost Rollins, Kim White, Marty Heffron.
Yes.
And then we will hear BZ 2022011.
Yes. This is a request for a variance to Article 6 signs of the zoning ordinance. The applicant is asking for a variance to allow a sign to encroach into the 10-foot setback at the front property line. Here's the prox map. The property is zoned CDD with some DDH across the street, Stoker Heights, I believe, and the East Alabama medical facilities across the street as well. Here is an aerial of the site. The building is under construction now, or there are two buildings under construction. One 2 stories and one 3 stories. They are building a restaurant, retail, and office space development. The applicant is wishing to place the sign here, 5 feet from the property line, when 10 feet is required. The sign would be 120 square feet and spaces for the individual tenants to have their signage. After staff's review of the variance request against the criteria for granting a variance. We found that the request does not meet the criteria, and we recommend denial. And the applicant is present.
Amber, I saw that you noted that there might actually be a visibility issue on this one, right? Is this
I
the-
did not, Morgan actually did the staff
There was a letter
report.
from the neighbor, Shirley
Oh, well,
Patton.
on number F.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Or staff is concerned that the
Okay.
proposed sign location may create a site visibility obstruction for
And then
motorists.
the neighbor said the same
Okay.
thing as well.
Yep.
That's
Yeah,
what
you're
I was
right, it's
thinking.
Morgan.
Good find.
I starred that one.
Anyone have any more questions for staff? Thank you. Is the applicant here? If they'd like to come and sign in and speak, please.
Okay. Can you clarify what you were just mentioning, the visibility?
I can read what the report says. It says staff is concerned that the proposed sign location may create a site visibility obstruction for motorists.
Was that an engineering comment?
Mr. Chairman.
I think that's just through staff review, what they looked at and thought, just something to bring to our attention.
Cause-
Steve may have something to expound
It
upon.
wasn't based on technical data, it was based on where cars line up and
Yeah.
stop, pull out, and that moving the sign closer to the street is more likely to present an obstruction to visibility than if it was set back as it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Can you zoom in on that area? Okay, I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's barely visible. You see that darker gray stripe, and there's the stop sign. So that is the stop bar where a car would stop to pull out onto East University. The sign is way back behind that point. I can tell you right now, it would be very easy to show that that does not obstruct a view. So I'm not sure why that comment was made. If you're looking this way and this way, that sign is nowhere close to obstructing your view. So the issue here.
What's the dimension from that gray to that sign? I don't know if that's 5 feet. 25.
25, yeah, maybe more than that. But
So the
this
sign
is-
proposed there is 5 feet from the property line, then you're saying that's 20 feet of right of way? Before you get to there where you stop?
Are you asking for a straight line distance this way?
Sure.
Yeah, so I'm just going off of the fact that I know this is 24 feet. So it would be, I think 25 would be accurate.
So where, I'm gonna ask, so when a car exits out of there, can you put your finger or your pointer on where the car, because it looks like it can go left or it can go,
Yeah, so
Right
this
or
is,
left?
this is a right out only,
so whereabouts would a car stop?
right there. There's the stop sign, there's the stop bar, right there.
So when a car is coming out and a car is coming in, does that sign, get in the way of somebody who coming out versus when someone's coming in? You know, like back, if you back up a little bit, so you straight across from the red box, and that's that little rectangle right there, if you will, where your hand is, from left to right.
Right.
Is that kind of like a dead, kind of a blind spot area if someone's coming in and coming out? You know what I mean? Or if that sign got moved back just a little bit more, would it be better? Like instead of 5 feet away, 6 feet away?
I'm not seeing where it would cause an issue with traffic. That's
Okay.
just my opinion as a civil engineer. So the things that aren't shown on this drawing is there's a water vault this drawing is a bit outdated. I'm not sure why it was used. I didn't put this application together. But there's a water vault in that island, so the sign cannot be moved back. It would conflict with the vault. There are 2 water meters here. There's a storm pipe here, as you can see. So it's pretty tight on where to locate the sign. On this side, you've got a significant grade change from the sidewalk down to a natural drainage feature that is draining through. It probably drops 8 to 10 feet right there. So if it was moved back out of the easement, it would pretty much not be visible. It would be so low. And then anywhere along the frontage, you can see that the sign would encroach into that same easement.
Somebody did a poor design with this. Was that, and to have that water vault there and not have a spot to put the sign?
The water vault was
Or was the sign
addition
an
during
afterthought?
construction. I'm
Was
sorry.
the sign an afterthought? I assume it was something that was talked about beforehand.
I don't think the sign was an afterthought, was it? The water vault is the main issue being right there.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure why it got located there. It wasn't on the original plans. I
Yeah.
think it was a
Little
change
change,
during
yeah.
construction.
Yeah, because I look for oddities in the code or reasons to either approve or deny a variance. And on this one, what I don't like is when something's brought to us and it is nothing that the code did. It's very black and white of, you need to be 10 feet, whatever it is, 10 feet from the property line. And someone threw a design together and said, we're going to put it 5 feet, and then we're going to go to this board and ask for relief. When it, from what you just said, you have nowhere else to put this sign. And you're putting that burden on us when whoever designed this should have said, let's find a spot, let's put it there. The water vault doesn't need to be there. It needs to be moved somewhere else. I don't do that for a living. I'm not sure where else it could go. But now y'all are here requesting this, and, you know, we can't see where the cars go. I do know that the closer to road signs are, that the more they inhibit, you know, visibility, that type of thing. And I know that's also a busy road. Being 5 feet closer to the road probably doesn't help you see those signs a whole lot more. I don't know if people even look at signs a whole lot anymore, but that's my thought on it. Just a second, sir. Does anybody else have any questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Could you eat up a
Go ahead.
parking space? And just shift it over and back?
Possibly. I mean, that parking lot is quite a bit lower than East University, so I don't know if it would even do any good being that low.
Do you have any pictures of it zoomed out further than what we have here?
No.
Just that one?
Mr. Chairman, in your packet, there is a plan that shows the entire frontage. I don't know if it's in the slide packet or not.
I see, yeah, I see,
Yeah,
I
it's
see
this
all that. I
slide.
just was
It's
wondering.
zoomed in.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what yeah, because we can't see the grade, or we can't see what's actually there.
Right.
We just have a site location with very minimal measurements. What's your issue with putting it down there?
That actually was suggested. It's in a power company easement, and the owner is afraid that eastbound traffic would go beyond the driveway before they saw the sign. So the best location for the sign is at the driveway. There's
So,
also an existing sign for the apartments
yeah,
in that island right next to it. So you never really want two signs that close to each other to block each other.
So so does the Alabama Power easement take up that whole area where you couldn't put it there?
Yeah, you can see it right there. There's the power line, and the easement is right there.
But it could go, I mean, I can't tell that much from the drawing, but it could go there, it looks like.
Yeah, with power company approval,
Okay.
we would have to see if they would approve that. I'm just not sure if the owner would even build a sign that far away from that. You can hear from him if he's allowed to come up.
Yeah. All right, any more questions for the applicant? Thank you.
All right.
All right, we'll open the public hearing if anyone would like to speak in favor or against this request. Yeah, sure.
Hello again. A couple of things about the water vault. The original plans were approved by the city with a certain size vault. After the approval of the plans and everything else, we were told that there was not adequate space in there for the meters they wanted. We had to enlarge that vault. So that's one of the issues. The other issue is that down there on that corner you're talking about, I know y'all can't see the grade, but it's probably 6 or 8 feet below the level of the parking lot. So to put a sign there and meet the city code for sign height and square footage, you would hardly see it coming from that direction.
Which is lower? Can
I'm
you
sorry?
clarify which is lower? The parking
This
lot or
this this bottom right-hand corner is the lowest part of the property.
so that would be more visible, right, to cars?
The parking lot is up here, and so you'd have a sign down here coming from this way. This whole thing coming from where the drive goes, going that way, there's a bank that goes up.
Yeah, I know what you're talking, now I'm recalling, yes.
Yeah. So it would be stuck down in a hole basically coming from that direction. Coming from this direction, you're right.
But by whole, you mean it would be at grade with the road, basically?
It would be at grade with the road. The other issue on that, I don't know how to operate this thing, but that gray area that David was talking about where the cars stop, that gray area is actually just a turn lane. It's not really oncoming traffic. So the oncoming traffic is actually another lane this way. So the factor of that red square or that red rectangle being any kind of line of sight issue is really, I don't see how it could be unless you're looking back at the building. But anyway, my main point was we had to change that vault after it had been approved the first time when Water Resources came back and looked at it and made us put in a larger vault. I'm not sure that's the exact reason, but I do remember that issue, and it made us put in a much larger vault there. Thank you.
What is a water vault? I want to make sure I understand.
I'm sorry, one other thing. We had heard that, and this is about the vault. We'd heard that the Water Resources Board had an issue with it. But I've actually got an email from Chris Berry to the Planning Commission saying they had no issue with this sign in terms of the water vault. A water vault is where the main comes in and it splits off all the meters that go to the building.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And Mr. Thompson, you cannot move it, if you go across that drive aisle to where, right above where it says hydrant, it can't go there?
That when we first started excavating this land, there was a natural spring right there.
Okay.
And we had to actually put that pipe you see in there because of that natural spring, and it goes down probably 8 feet, probably 8 feet from the curb down to that spring. So we're kind of.
Is there any way to move it? See where that little parking space is right there on the corner, just off the right top corner of that red square? Is there any way to use any of that space? So you kind of keep it in the same area, but you move it back, and maybe sacrifice a parking space or something?
We wouldn't mind sacrificing a parking space. The problem is, even from that red square down to that curb just above it, that's a drop also. This driveway goes down pretty significantly to grade so that it's very high right there and very low down there on the
Could you
road.
just make a taller sign?
We can't because the code won't let us, you only have so many square feet per height of sign. Could we make it narrower and taller? I don't know about that.
They're allowed up to 16 feet.
But you could build, so you could build up the grade of that parking space, right? To meet that.
Could you build like a platform and then your sign is really not sitting on a platform, so the platform and the sign aren't considered the same thing, right? I don't know.
Possibly. I'm going to defer to the experts here. I don't think we could put it on top of those water lines, though, could we? So we'd have to go over,
Not without a hold harmless agreement.
yeah.
Well, that's a private line.
Okay.
And the measurement of the sign, the height, would actually be taken from the center line of the road. So if the road is lower, then you could build the sign up to that 16 feet. If that makes sense.
Unfortunately, the road, our parking lot goes down from the road everywhere. Well, it goes down from the road about halfway down, and then it's way up from the road at
So
that
you
corner.
could build up on your site with the sign, and then from the point where it is level with the street, that's where you measure your 16 feet. So
Alright.
it would actually be taller than 16 feet.
What's the width of a 16-foot sign?
There is no minimum.
Oh, really? Okay. I thought we were,
We were told 10 feet.
yeah.
If you go 10 feet, 120 square feet.
Oh, the 10 feet is just the setback. So there is no minimum width for a sign, as long as it's 10 feet from the property line.
But there's a maximum width. Or is that what you're asking?
No, there is not.
Is there not a
But I'm saying there's a
maximum?
maximum area.
There's
Correct.
a maximum
Yeah.
area, that's
Yeah.
what I, so if you do go 16 feet, there's a maximum width to get to that maximum area. That's what what is the area, the maximum area?
120.
120 square feet? Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, anyone else that wants to speak for or against this variance? We'll close the public hearing and open to the board for a motion discussion and/or motion. Steve?
Mr. Chairman, the other thing I would point out is that there's a sidewalk before you get to that stop bar. And typically you want people to stop before they just pull right up on the sidewalk, and somebody may be going up and down that sidewalk. So, if you stop at that point, which is recommended, I think, and then maybe you can pull forward if there's a stop bar further forward. But this is, as you all alluded to, this is all part of site design. It should be something that you're designing a site, and I know oftentimes staff will ask people, have you provided a place for a sign? You see a building sometimes and it's not designed to accommodate a sign, and you say, have you thought about where you're going to put your sign? So it's something that certainly ought to be designed as part of the initial step in the process. I think that staff has asked questions about other locations, but when it comes down to it, it's not our role to look for a suitable location. The regulations say 10-foot setback and certain types of things, and we're happy to review areas that they want to propose for a sign, but in the end, it's really not our role to kind of come up with a solution for them. So, and there were other, when you go through A through G, excuse me, I should say, I think there were other comments that were made by Morgan when she wrote the report as to why it did or didn't meet some of those other requirements as well.
So to clarify, there is a marked crosswalk, or there will be a marked crosswalk there?
I don't think it's a crosswalk. I just see that it looks like there's a sidewalk that goes through right there where that, before you get to the gray area that was
Yeah.
mentioned by the applicant. I think there's a sidewalk right there that goes across the driveway.
Multi-use path.
Or multi-use path in this case, okay.
Is that the reason for the 10-foot setback from the sidewalk and the sign?
No, it's a 10-foot setback from the property line.
I see it now. Yeah, because so it picks back up on the other side, and it's almost at it meets the asphalt, or meets the curb rather.
Looks like it's right up against the back of the right-of-way.
Else have anything? No. I'll make a motion to deny BZ 2022-011.
Drew Goodner,
Yes.
Ross Rollins, Kim White,
Yes.
Marty Heffron.
Yes.
Thank you. I don't think there is any other business that we have. I know I sent that email out. Do most people hear that first week of August, or do we need to postpone that?
I'm here both weeks. I don't go anywhere.
Cool, okay. I don't have any communication. Any further staff communication?
I would just mention that we did set up some training for you in August, so if you don't have that on your radar and your calendar yet, please mark the
24th? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, first week's good for me.